So it might feel like a slightly strange reading at this time of year. It's often a reading that might be read probably more at Easter in some ways. But you know what? Let me start here. When I started going to watch Leeds United, and I can talk about Leeds United today, can't I, Anthony? Thank you. I started going when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and when I first went, my dad took me. You know, my dad was a big Leeds United fan, and he took me to my first Leeds United match, and I think it probably when I was about 7, 8, 9 is when I started going to watch Leeds, and my dad used to take a little stool for me to stand on. We used to go on the side of the, of the pitch, and when it was standing, but I'd have a little stool to stand on so I could see. And it was great. And then as I got to be a little bit older, probably around 16, 17, I started going to watch Leeds with my mates. But when I go with my mates, we didn't stand in the side, we used to go into the cop, you know, the main stand. And obviously it was standing then, so it was the main stand. And we'd often go somewhere near the top in the middle. That was the place to be. And we'd aim for that kind of place to watch the football. But then, when Leeds scored, and I have great memories, or dodgy memories, of being carried along by the crowd. So when Leeds scored, obviously then the crowd, it was all standing, the crowd go barning, and I can remember quite often just being carried by the crowd and ending up somewhere by the time the crowd had finished celebrating the goal, somewhere near the bottom of the stand, rather than near the top. Often without my feet even touching the ground, if I'm honest. Being carried along by the crowd is at the heart of our reading today. I want to say a number of things. The first thing I want to talk about is being carried along with the crowd. Think about this story. Imagine the scene of this story. Jesus has been betrayed, he's been arrested, and he's now brought before Pilate. There's a false accusation against him, but then we learn about a custom to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. They have two choices. Is it going to be Boris or Trust? Oh, no, sorry. Are they going to release Jesus or Barabbas? Verse 20 said this, didn't it? But the chief priests and the elders persuade the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus executed. Let me say that again. But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus executed. So the cries go up, free Barabbas, and for Jesus, crucify him. You know, I'm not sure times have changed that much. Sandra and Alison will tell you because they were there, but recently we went to a meeting about the traffic changes that might take place in our community. And there was a crowd, and it was a hostile, not very nice, kind of galvanised crowd at this public meeting. It was pretty not nice. They needed heads banging together. The crowd was up and sort of quite aggressive. You know, I have a deep concern in society that for Christians, and for Christians, as part of it, of the danger of being influenced and carried along by the crowd, especially when it goes against our faith in Jesus. You know, the crowd is powerful. Its voices often can be very loud and very dominant. There can often be many voices, so they must be right. But I have a big question mark about that sometimes. My fear is that this power of the crowd can sometimes mean for society and sometimes mean for us as the people of God. It's easier, isn't it, I think, to follow the crowd. It's to be happy to go along with the crowd. People generally don't want to stand out, really. And what if the crowd turns on us if we do stand out? The crowd's influence can sometimes make things justifiable and acceptable, even when really They're not. And this can happen in all sorts of areas, in morality, in the way that we speak, in our attitudes towards things, in our actions, all kinds of things. And I think a good example for me is Halloween. And we know that people will be celebrating tomorrow Halloween. See, the crowd now says it's okay to celebrate Halloween. It's just harmless fun. But to me, this is just what God's enemy does. He's very subtle. I think there's many reasons why, certainly as Christians or in society, we shouldn't be celebrating Halloween. And I could talk about my reasons and have a bit of a rant myself, but then I thought I found this. There was an article that came through on one of the Christian Premier emails that I get, Christian news articles. And it just says this: an ex-Satanist turned evangelist is warning Christians not to mark Halloween. Author John Rummers claims that the occasion opens the door to dark forces. Introduced to a satanic cult by his family at the age of 8, Rummers says believers must equip themselves with discernment, warning Jesus never took the devil lightly in Scripture. The born-again Christian, who now runs his own ministry in America, told the Christian Post, there's a quote from Anton Levy, founder of the Church of Satan, where he says in his own words, I want to thank every Christian parent, not Buddha, not Muhammad, not that, every Christian parent. I want to thank them that they allow their children to celebrate the devil one night of the year, which is Halloween. John Rammers continued saying, he's intentionally thanking Christian parents, thanking you for dressing up your kids, changing their identity and sacrificing them spiritually. He likened the practice to having a one-night stand, saying, we go celebrate Halloween. So when we go and celebrate Halloween, we're in bed with the devil for one night. To me, it's like, why would you want to cheat on Jesus? Jesus doesn't cheat on you. I don't see any Satanists coming to church. No way. Now, you might think that's heavy or controversial, I don't know, but the crowd say it's okay, and I'm not convinced. I think another example is how we sometimes, the crowd's power, is how we speak about people, character assassinations that go on from a distance in conversation and on social media. We just get drawn in. Sometimes it's how we water down our morality to suit us. You know, Romans 12 verse 2 says this, do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing and perfect will. You know, as God's people, we are called to live in this world, but not of it. We are called to be distinctive. And that, I believe, is going to take some real discernment and is going to take some real courage. So be careful about getting carried along by the crowd. The second thing I want to say, and I want to focus in on the story today, is because they got carried along by the crowd, they missed out. And they missed the truth, And they missed the truth in lots of ways. So what happened in our story today to these ordinary people that were stood in this crowd before Pilate? Well, I think 4 things happened to them. And these were ordinary people. I wonder what we would have done if we were in that crowd before Pilate with Jesus and Barabbas standing before us. But here's what happened to the crowd. The first thing I've said already, they were influenced by the crowd and they got carried along. We remember in some ways that this was the same crowd that a week earlier shouted, Hosanna, as Jesus rode into Jerusalem on a donkey. How fickle the crowd can be. And that, I believe, has not changed today. But the second thing that happened to them is they got fueled by healthy attitudes. You can imagine it in the scene, can't you? There was anger, there was aggression, there would have been hatred that got whipped up, crucifying. You can imagine those attitudes being whipped up in the crowd. I watched a programme the other day, and it was Woodstock, but it was the Woodstock in 1999, and it was horrendous what it ended up like. It was riots and everything else. And one guy said, I couldn't believe that over a weekend I came to a festival as a pretty normal, kind of down-to-earth, just young man ready for a music festival. But by the end of the weekend, I was an anarchist, burning and aggressive and all that. Just the way sometimes it can turn in people. This is a real concern to me about what can be fueled in people in today's society and perhaps sometimes in us. The anger that sometimes can be fueled, and the aggression, the judgment, the cynicism and criticism, the negativity that sometimes can come. Where is it often stirred up from? I don't know. Well, it comes in the crowd. Sometimes perhaps it's on the news, perhaps it's on social media, the radio, whatever. It can sometimes feel like a thunderous rushing river. Then there's a great danger that we get swept along with it. My biggest concern also is, what is it doing to us? Last week we talked about our bodies being temples of the Holy Spirit. But what then goes into our temple, you see, through our eyes and through our ears? And how does that affect us on the inside? What's in our heart? When we get caught up in the crowd, when we start to be aggressive and speak negatively and kind of have that anger in us, and it's coming through in our actions and our attitudes, how that is affecting us as people, and especially the people of God. I think sometimes it gets like that bit of rot inside an apple that starts to grow and grow and affect the whole of the apple. See, in that story, then people, they got carried on with the crowd. They got fueled by these unhealthy attitudes. And then the third thing is that they got blinded by what was right. Did you notice in the crowd they released a criminal who had been arrested for insurrection in the city and for murder? And what did they do with Jesus? They wanted to put to death an innocent man. Do you see how they got blinded? But the crowd blinded them to what was right. See, I believe that wrong can so easily be influenced to seem right nowadays. And I believe that right can so easily be influenced to become wrong nowadays. It happens all the time with our morality, for example. What is accepted, what the crowd now says is okay, even when it goes against our faith. It gets switched around. We get blinded to what is right. And it changes. And it gets influenced. And we say, well, everyone else is doing it. The crowd's voice is loud around it. It must be okay. But the Bible says it's not okay. It's not God's best for us. It's not right. Again, we need that discernment and that courage, don't we? And finally, with the crowd, probably more than anything else, the most devastating thing when I read this story, when I thought about the crowd, is that they missed the truth. See, Jesus said, didn't he? I am the way, the truth, and the life. They missed Jesus, even when he was right in front of them. You know, we need to be careful that we don't let the crowd influence us in such a way that we miss Jesus, who he is, what he stands for, and how we as his people should follow him. Because I think even as Christians, because of the influence of the crowd, sometimes I feel that we miss the truth. We miss Jesus. And the truth, you know, is really important. John 8 verse 32 says, then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And did you notice in the story, particularly when it was on the screen, that there were two Jesuses actually in this story? There was Jesus the Messiah, but actually Barabbas was also called Jesus, Jesus Barabbas. And what happened was the crowd followed a wrong Jesus. Do we ever follow a wrong Jesus? And what I mean by that is, sometimes do we ever create Jesus in a way that suits ourselves? Basically, we make up our own truth rather than following Jesus, the way, the truth, and the life. I think there's a great danger in our society, and it can hurt us as Christian people. So before I kind of turn it around, it feels a bit negative in some ways, what I'm sharing at the moment. I'm going to try and turn that around a little bit. Just that whole sense of being careful, how we get swallowed up by the crowd, by society that says it's okay now to do this, it's okay to believe this, it's okay to call people and be judgmental, it's okay to follow a morality which go far against the kingdom of God. We have to be so careful, we have to be discerning, we have to be courageous, because it affects us. It hurts us. It hurts the temple of Christ in our lives, our hearts. To be so careful we don't get swept along. So easy in the politics, isn't it? You know, if I'm listening to both Liz Truss, and whatever you think about Liz Truss and whatever, but the crowd were basically saying, crucify her. I don't know her. I know she's loved by God. I know that she's special to God and Jesus died for her. Yeah, whatever. I know she may have made choices and mistakes in the kind of system. I'm not saying that we should just go along with everything because it would be nice in the way that we have to call out wrong and all that kind of stuff. But we don't crucify a person who is loved by God, valued by God, who Christ died for. That's not a political statement by any shape or form. So finally, let's turn it around just a little bit, because we need to shine, don't we? We need to shine brightly. Do you know what has been hijacked by Halloween? What's been hijacked, by Halloween? All Saints' Day, really. What do we celebrate? Do we celebrate All Saints' Day or Halloween? We celebrate Halloween, don't we? Or the world celebrates Halloween. All Saints' Day is a celebration of those who have gone before us, who bore witness to Christ, who were light for the gospel of Christ. But what does society celebrate? See, we celebrate Halloween, darkness. And it's hijacked All Saints' Day, which is a celebration of light. John 8 verse 12 says, Jesus is the light of the world. He came to bring light, to shine truth, and to fight darkness. We today are the light of the world. Matthew 5 verse 14. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. There is a great need for God's people to shine for Jesus in this world today. To shine for his truth. To shine for his kindness. To shine for his compassion. For his value. For his acceptance. To shine for his standards. And when I was thinking about that, the other day I went to get my hair cut, and I go to the same place to get my hair cut, and in the place where I get my hair cut, there are 3 people that can cut my hair. But I've been to all 3 of these over time, but the one I like most is where I go to the person I book in to see him to cut my hair. I have to make an appointment, you see. But I needed my haircut, I think it was before before your wedding. I thought, oh, my hair's a mess, I needed to get it in. So I looked online, I need to get my hair cut. But the guy who I normally get my hair cut had no appointments available. But I thought, well, I had to get my hair cut, so I had to book onto one of the other guys. So I goes into the shop. The guy who normally does my haircut's there in the shop, as well as this other guy that was going to cut my hair today, this other lady who's there. And the guy who normally cuts my hair says, all right. I said, all right, sorry, I'm not with you today. He said, oh, don't worry. So I sit down in the chair of the other guy who's going to cut my hair. And he's like, oh, you're all right. And we're chatting, as they do. And then he said, I've got a great joke for you. And the guy who normally cuts my hair said, no, don't tell him the joke. He's a vicar or a priest or something. Because this guy who normally cuts my hair knows that I lead a church. He's not quite sure works out exactly what I do, but he knows I work. And we chat sometimes a little bit about that. He said, don't tell him the joke, because he knew the joke that he was going to tell me, and he says, it's rude, it's not appropriate. So the guy who's going to cut my hair says, oh, he won't mind, I'll tell him it. So I says, you know what? I'd rather you do. Don't tell me the joke. He said, because actually probably, if it's rude and not appropriate, it's probably not a joke I want to hear. The guy said, okay, I won't tell you it. Every so often he says, sure you don't want to tell that joke. And even when I go in now and still get my hair cut with the guy, he still says, don't forget that joke, I've got it for you if you want. But I said, so I don't know what the joke is. Because I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear a rude and nasty joke. Because I'm a Christian. That's not me trying to be pompous or big. It's just, I want the stuff to go in through my ears and my heart and to be the right stuff. I want my standard to be the standard of Christ, not just, I could go along with it, I could listen to it, I might think it's funny, I don't know. I don't want to hear it. We need to shine. Why do we need to shine? We need to shine because light pushes out darkness. I've said this so many times. People struggle with darkness in their lives, and what they do is they try and push darkness out. You cannot do that. How does darkness go? It's when you let light in. Because when light comes into darkness, darkness has to flee. Shine your light so darkness is pushed away, both in society and in your own personal life. We need to shine because light brings security and hope. You know, one of my last conversations with Amy was that she was in hospital. And she says to me, I don't like it at night in hospital. It's too dark. I like to leave a light on at night because it makes me feel safe. You know, Jesus, the light of the world, brings security and hope into people's lives when it shines. And light also lets people see. I think real light reveals the truth. And that's what we want people to find, the truth of Christ in their lives. Matthew 4, verse 16 says, the people living in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned. Let us shine the light of Christ so that the truth of Christ is brought and people can see. That they can feel secure, that there's hope in the light of Christ. That darkness is pushed away. Because darkness cannot be where light is. We need to shine as the people of God in this world. We're encouraged not to put our light as followers of Jesus under a bowl, hide it away, but instead put it on a stand to shine before others that they may see your good deeds and glorify your God. You know, a little story as I've come to finish. I asked Margaret if I could share this, but I know Margaret, when she was we had the other Sunday when we had all the people come out who were giving church members, and I'd asked them all to give me one or 2 minute testimony of their story, and they're all oh, but Margaret particularly this is not her favourite place, being up here in front of everybody sharing, and but Margaret had somehow picked up the other week something I said, and she kind of owned it herself, because she said, you know what, I don't really want to share because it's not, I feel a bit nervous and I don't feel I've got something to share, whatever. But then she said, but I know it said that, well, if I don't share or if we don't shine, then the devil kind of wins. And she said, well, I don't want that to happen. So I'll share. That's what we need. We need that discernment and that courage. Not to be judgmental, not to be aggressive and angry and hateful, but to be kind and compassionate and loving and to shine Christ into this world. Yeah. And be discerning, because it's so easy to get swept along by the crowd. Well, the crowd say, the crowd are loud and dominant, and there's more of them, so they must be right. Not always. Be careful how we speak, how we treat people, what we post on social media, what we get drawn into, what we watch, all those stuff, we've got to be careful. Let's try and keep close to Christ. For our own sake and for the sake of the world around us. The song says, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm going to let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm going to let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Don't put it under a bush. Don't put it under a bowl and hide it. Shine it out. And, you know, especially as we go through tomorrow, which just does my head in. I know I've said before, I mean, you know, my son's birthday is God's sense of humour, Halloween. It's on the 31st of October. And I used to, you know, we said before, I remember when he was born, and there he is, a little baby Adam in the hospital, and the nurse comes, "Oh, he was born on Halloween, you better have lots of Halloween parties." I said, "We will not be having Halloween parties." We will be celebrating his birth. We will shine truth, light, not darkness. Amen. Amen. Let's worship.
In my wrestling and in my doubts, in my failures, you won't walk out. Your great love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Whoa, you are the peace in my troubled sea. In the silence, you won't let go. In the questions, your truth will hold. Your great love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Whoa, you are the peace in my troubled sea. My lighthouse, shining in the darkness, I will follow you. Oh, my lighthouse, I will trust the promise. You will carry me safe to shore. Tomorrow brings. With each morning I'll rise and sing. My God's love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Whoa, you are the peace